Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the May 3rd. It is May. We actually made it out of April, barely alive with respect to investing, but it is May. And let's go ahead and spend a few moments together talking about a few things that are potentially of high interest to many of us. My name is Mark Robertson. I am managing partner and founder of Manifest Investing, joined here by Ken Kavula. Good afternoon, Ken.
Good afternoon, Mark.
Is it
Good afternoon, Bunny. How are you doing? Do we call you Bunny or Bunny Scoot or Diane? What do we call you, Diane?
Bunny Scoot is saved for those people that knew me back then. Diane.
Back then. Okay, Diane's better today. Okay.
Diane is better. Yeah, that is just a one-time reference to, I think I first met Diane in the early 1990s at a thing. Was that actually?
San Jose.
Was it CompuServe?
Bank at San Jose.
Okay, so that's 1998, maybe? Something like that. It might have been earlier than that. Anyhow, that's what the reference is to, and Diane was a magnificent contributor to the iClub list and the educational efforts, so glad to welcome you back, Diane.
Thank you.
And she'll share some thoughts about Omaha perhaps later. So we're going to cover a few things here today. I had no idea that there were people out there manifesting, so thought we'd share that.
You're just not up on the lingo, Mark. That's all.
I must live in a bunker or something. Sometimes this stuff gets by me. But we also want to talk a little bit about Omaha and shopping with Warren Buffett. Also want to go back and boy, you talk about flashing back to the past, back to the turn of the century. And actually, an article I wrote about a less than perfect storm that had to do with the NASDAQ and how crazy it went there towards the turn of the century and that sort of thing. And Wile E. Coyote there is in honor of the current or recent behavior of many stock markets, including the NASDAQ. So that's what we're going to take a look at today. And of course, Acme. All right, here's our standard disclaimer. Most of you here are familiar faces and names, and you know the drill, but no investment recommendation is intended. Everything we do here is to illustrate and demonstrate the methods, philosophies, techniques, beliefs, and all the sort of thing of the modern investment club movement as championed by the National Association of Investors, Better Investing, and us at Manifest Investing. You will hear opinions from us. You should also be, you have to promise to do this. You have to do your own homework, conduct your own review, and make your own decisions with respect to buying or selling anything. This is about education. Every once in a while, we'll talk about something we actually hold in one of our portfolios, and we probably should include the model portfolios in that, like the round table and tin cup and everything else, but we'll try to disclose that. We have a monthly roundtable. You just heard Ann Manning being recruited for the one that we'll do live in Dallas in June. And if you want to be on a roundtable reminder list, please send an email to nkavula1@comcast.net, and Natalie will make sure you're aware of those sessions. They're almost always on Tuesday evenings, the last Tuesday of the month at 8:30 Eastern Time. And if you have any follow-up questions, including if you want copies of these slides, send an email to me, mark@manifestinvesting.com. And any other questions you might have, you can also send to Ken. That's his email at the bottom, kavula1@comcast.net. Anything else we want to kick around here, Ken?
No, you covered it really well, Mark.
All right, so let's talk about this manifesting thing that I had no idea was going on, even though I've been doing this for 20 years. This is actually from an article that came out just the other day, and actually 2 or 3 people sent it to me because they thought it was kind of appropriate. And here's why. And I don't think this is too much of a stretch. It really is the process of visualizing something. Now, some of it is some of this self-help and aspirational thought, trying to think something into being. But I do believe that our approach to investing does involve this notion of imagining and then, basically laying out an image or a visualization of what we hope could happen, and then keeping track of it and owning it for as long as it makes sense to do so. And I found all these memes on "Shut Up, I'm Manifesting." I'd actually cleaned up the language a little bit there on the one down on the lower left, but I really do think there's some connections to investing here, and I don't think I'm stretching too hard for this one. You know, it really is basically building this image. We've talked about this. We talked about Pulitzer and the St. Louis audience last week, and the images flashing up on the screen and the oohs and ahs and giggles and all that kind of stuff. That's an important part of it. And then just the rest of it really comes down to this notion of discipline and patience and working a plan. So Ken, am I way out of line here?
I don't think so, Mark. The only word that I would disagree with is that word wish. And I think of it more as making a plan that you'd like to see come all the way to fruition. You know,
This right here?
setting a goal, if you would. Yeah. Wish, I understand wish, but that comes to me more like Aladdin than manifesting. So I think it's a plan for the better, you know, and usually for personal betterment. I think in the current manifestation of the word.
Yeah. Well, you know, and that plan really is often optimistic, but optimistic with a high dose of feasibility and viability is the way I kind of look at it. And we keep track of things and hope that they work out as well as we envision.
Yeah, that quote about creating a vision for the future, that captures what I think manifestation is all about, and you're trying to do that as you sit around. I've never been comfortable with turning some of these things into nouns and verbs and adjectives and everything else, but if you watch our financial porn on TV, you'll see that an awful lot of the stockbrokers love to turn words into adjectives and create words where there's already perfectly good English words for what they want, but they're creating new ones out of nouns. So we might as well go there too.
All right. So as for me, I'm going to keep manifesting and we'll behave. All right. Here's a quick moment with the stock market and what it's been doing lately. Again, the stock market is measured by the green bars. That's the value line arithmetic average. It's literally the average put together by all the stocks in the value line standard investment survey. And it topped out and it's been sinking back. And you may recall a few months ago, I said that the green bars would approach the blue line. I didn't expect to be right so quickly. And that's what the big arrow is for. And again, keep in mind that the blue line is just a long-term exponential trend through those price points. The red ones are more significant, much like a stock selection guide. If you basically put together a forecast of all the companies covered by value line and did it much like a stock selection guide, and then you averaged them all out and you took a picture of it every quarter, you would get those red dots on that trend. So, these are periods when everything was in the buy zone, and these are periods when it was tough to find anything in the buy zone. And that's as simple as it gets. As the stock prices have been falling and the fundamentals have basically been recovering, we get this. And I expect that average to actually creep up next week when everything catches up with the drop in the market. And actually some of the fundamentals are still improving, even though it's hard to tell it by the prices. And especially
Mark, how many green bars in a year?
4.
Is it
these are
They're quarterly bars. They're quarterly bars. Okay.
And we do this on a monthly basis too, every once in a while, but we more often put it out there as a quarterly. So anyhow, this is just I told you so moment. I just didn't expect to be right so quickly. All right. And in an area where, boy, it really sometimes is painful to be right, you're looking at our 10-cup model portfolio. For those of you not familiar, this goes back to 1995 and basically taking the maximum investable amount in a 401k and pretending that you could invest it in stocks. That wasn't so easy to do back in the late 1990s. It's gotten easier, but we're basically simulating or emulating a retirement account. And I was getting ready to celebrate 5 million, and we've found a speed bump, and now I think we found a bit of a brick wall. Here in the last month, we'd actually had one of our weaker months in a long time, but still over the long term, that amount of investing has beat, an index fund investment in the Wilshire 5000 by a fair amount. And believe it or not, I never would have thought I could watch a balance go down $700,000 or $800,000 and not be too deeply troubled by it. So
It's the
cool.
it's the same feeling, Mark, that clubs I'm in now that have $1 million plus portfolios now spend $50,000 as if it was nothing. And I think back 10 years when the club was brand new, and they would agonize over $500. So now we're throwing around 50,000 as if it's nothing. So
yeah, I remember those days with the
just
mutual
those big
club.
numbers. Yeah, just those big numbers. That's all.
Yeah, our first meeting in we would have dinner meetings of the Mutual Club of Detroit, and my spouse Wendy would join us. And she, of course, had sat through all those meetings in Chicago with the numbers you were talking about, Ken. Sweating over a $500 investment in the club, and then these guys are tossing around, in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we're just sitting there going, "Whoa!" All right, so here's our tin cup moment. For those of you not familiar with the movie, it's a great movie. It's actually hailed as one of the great romance movies of the 1990s, believe it or not, between Kevin Costner and Rene Russo. And there's a scene late in the movie where he's actually, he's the coming out of nowhere to potentially win the U.S. Open, and he reaches the 18th hole, and he proceeds to hit like 6 straight shots in the water. He's trying to make the green in 2 shots. And then finally he pops one on the green and it goes in, much like it would have been an eagle without all those shots in the water. And it's just one of those moments. And he could have just walked up and taken his drop up near the green, but he's going to hit it on there from 300 yards out. And it's just a classic movie moment. And I think it applies to this. And then
Give us the name of the movie, Mark.
The name of the movie is Tin Cup.
Okay.
I may have forgot to mention that. All right, so it was Tin Cup. It's actually a legend that it's one of the reasons that our model portfolio is named Tin Cup. That's somewhat true. It's also named Tin Cup in honor of Warren Buffett. We're going to talk about Warren in a minute. And Warren's statement that if he couldn't do well in the stock market, and by what he meant by that was stocks are not 100% efficient. They don't always incorporate information. In other words, there's always opportunities. If that weren't true, he said he'd be a bum on the street corner with a tin cup. So that's the 2 origins of this particular portfolio. The reason that I'm showing the dropping of the ball and continuing to try to make that shot on the 18th fairway, this month we actually added a share of Alphabet, Google, and a couple shares of Amazon, and a little bit of Micron Technology to the portfolio. So in the midst of all this carnage that's going on, we're just going to keep hitting the ball. Got to go for it. And the portfolio itself is actually pretty well positioned after this plummet. Like I say, it got up in almost a 4.5 million at one point, but a really decent projected annual return, very nice quality, very nice growth. It's a formidable portfolio that actually contains a number of our community favorites and companies that have been featured on roundtables, and you'll see some of yours on there, Ken, also.
I own a pretty good chunk of that list, Mark. Tell me, is LHC Group the one with Louis Vuitton and Friends and Hermes and all those?
LHC, I think, is a healthcare company.
It's a healthcare company. Okay, that's the only unfamiliar name on the list for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on America's Car Mart is a fairly recent ad. We've been pretty high on Boston Beer, even though it's been a bit flat lately. Sorry. And that's Costner there after he actually holed out and had that miraculous shot. This is the type of company that we like to remain invested in. Even Ken and I were talking about this before we came on. we are just astounded sometimes by the amount of negative, and for that matter, in some cases, positive price activity on individual stocks when the actual companies just keep chugging along. And this is one that Ken fairly recently added to the roundtable tracking portfolio. And I think we probably should take advantage of opportunities for a company like this over time. What are your thoughts, Ken?
Well, do you see the sales growth forecast for this company, and do you see how large this company is? I mean, this is just a company that I can compare to maybe one or two other companies in the world, and the ridiculousness sometimes of the wild swings in the price of the stock of this company or Microsoft or Apple, it just drives me crazy. This company, I don't want to give my famous what's not to like, but what's not to like about Google here? What is there that you really can pick at to the point where you're going to walk away from it? I mean, it doesn't even carry one of these astronomical PEs. What's your analysis? Mark's doing an analysis based on a forward PE of 25 for a company growing over 15% a year.
Yeah,
I think even Ralph would allow you to consider this one, Mark.
Yeah, and you're looking at upper teens for the projected return on the recent price dip. I think it's actually dipped down closer to 2,300 fairly recently.
Yes, it has.
The projected return on value, they've got credit card debt, and they've got a little bit of long-term debt, but look at the cash on hand. And I think we should probably do, maybe for a future roundtable, when we feature the company. About a year ago, we took a look at Tesla and pointed out that Tesla was not a car company. And these guys are not an advertising company. They get a substantial amount of their revenues and profits from advertising, but they're into a bunch of other stuff also. And I think that's a point that should be made and understood. So it really is a technology conglomerate that can...
Well, we just presented Google at a Ticker Talk last week, Mark.
Okay.
And over 80% of their revenue is still coming from search. So, I mean, like it or not, that verb to Google really epitomizes where this company still makes the lion's share of its money.
Absolutely. But they're actually more diversified in that aspect than a Facebook.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And the things that they're doing that we're not completely aware of, that list is probably a lot longer than anybody knows. And I think it's wise that mom and dad give the children time to grow up before they submit them to constant inspection by the outside public. Let these trials, these space launches, like they call them, it's not really a space launch, but that's what they're talking about. Let them be profitable or not profitable, and most of all, let some of them fail and make mistakes. I think that's the only way you truly make good, lasting kinds of discoveries.
Yeah, so they're into a bunch of stuff, and we'll be talking more about it. So, all right, let's kind of switch gears and move on to Warren. That picture is actually from a couple years ago. It's not from this most recent weekend, but thought we'd just spend just a few moments. It is referred to as the Woodstock. And Diane, if you're out there, was that your first visit to the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting?
Nancy DeGraff and I talked with Kim Butcher and Avi at a Bink, and we were going to go in 2020. And obviously that did not happen. 2021 did not happen. But this year, Nancy and I made the pilgrimage, and it was the first one for both of us. Amazing to speak with all the companies. You just really do not know the depth of everything that they own until you walk into the shopping extravaganza and see all these companies and their wares.
Yeah, did you get a chance to corner Mr. Buffett and tell him that we want more money for our Clayton Homes that he took away from us a few years ago?
You know what? We did bemoan this at Clayton Homes, and they all knew what we were talking about. The people that they brought to represent the companies, much like Warren talks about his shareholders, they have longevity.
Yep. Yeah.
He talks about how hard it is to repurchase shares because most of the shareholders don't want to give up their shares.
Yeah, it's definitely a diamond hands. We are going to talk a little bit about some of the stocks that they've bought over the years, and I just wanted to point out, that part of the meeting covered some of the recent transactions with Chevron and Occidental, and we actually lucked into one at the roundtable with Activision Blizzard. That's just a few months ago, and actually generated quite a return. So there is, I think it's valid to be out there trying to find the next stock that's going to approach him. And we talked about this the other day, Diane. He doesn't have to go looking for companies. Companies come to him. And
absolutely.
Kind of neat stuff.
We don't want to give the impression that Buffett is buying Activision. It's actually Microsoft buying Activision, but Buffett jumped on the train for the arbitrage amount.
Yep. And meanwhile, I think Elon Musk was actually jealous or envious of all the attention that they were getting in Omaha, and so he put out this tweet, which sounds an awful lot like Buffett. And this actually goes to what we've been talking about all along. And Ken, I really think this actually fits what you were talking about, how the price of companies can be so turbulent when the company's just sitting there fundamentally marching on. And
right.
I think that's what this is really aimed at. Interesting.
Warren himself talks a lot about the quality of the products and the quality of management. Mm-hmm. As you know, when he buys these companies, he basically leaves the people intact. He's very hands off with many of these companies. And he remarked that at one of the companies, it turns out that the CEO had developed Alzheimer's, but they didn't know it for several years because Warren was so hands off. But this goes back to a Peter Lynch quote, something about owning a business that any idiot can operate because one day an idiot will be operating it.
Well, yeah, I think he's the master in building a collection of companies that just keep on ticking, and it's really kind of cool to watch. And of course, he's right up there in our standings. So what I thought we would do, and Diane, you can kind of coach us through this a little bit too, is Morningstar came out with this article last week, so I wanted to take a look at what out there might be, at least on his radar. And it came to us from Morningstar. These were the companies that are listed. Many of them are community favorites for us. And I don't think there's a company on there that isn't, somewhat known. Maybe Aspen Technology a little bit is a little bit of a newcomer there, but the rest of them, including companies like Jack Henry, members of our community of interest for a long time. C.H. Robinson, another one that's really been there. So what I did is I took and put them to the test, took a look at, some of the things that we look at for these companies. You can see these companies are all pretty decent quality. I think that's something that Buffett pays a lot of attention to, as Diane just said. These all are in pretty good shape with respect to the return forecast, their projected annual return. I do think they're a little bit lean here, projected return on value. And then what I've also done is kind of put together a little score sheet that if he were going to be going after these companies, he does have $100 billion laying around, by the way. As of the end of September, it was closer to 150. It's now down to closer to 100. And these are the market caps of these companies, so he could write a check for these.
I will say one of the things he also talks about is he likes companies that generate cash flow and have an effective use of capital. If they don't have effective use of capital, he'll take the cash out of it and put it to use someplace else. But more often than not, that's something that he also focuses on. Yeah,
and that's going to show up in that proof number a little bit, and because of the way because of the denominators, the enterprise value, which is going to also incorporate the debt. So capital allocation is reflected here. So that's why it's my theory / thesis that some of these he'd be a little less interested in, based on that alone. So let's go ahead and take a look. And by the way, you don't have to look for small companies. He ended up paying $44 billion for Burlington Northern a little over 10 years ago. So
I've thought I want to focus, and I'm writing it down for my own purposes here, Mark, but the one that looks most attractive to me is Landstar. If I have the company right, is this a trucking company?
It is, trucking logistics.
I've thought for a long time why Buffett hasn't moved into that particular area after moving into the air freight and moving into the trains and everything. Why he hasn't moved into trucking at all. Very interesting, and that proof value for Landstar is intriguing to me.
Yeah, and it's still actually fairly small. He'd probably buy that with cash. He wouldn't even need his checkbook.
Just petty cash, right?
All right, and this is kind of what we were talking about a few minutes ago, Diane. Here's the list of the companies. And I think this came from Matt Spielman this weekend, so thank you, Matt. And he pretty much has his finger on the pulse of these companies. So when they approach him or he approaches them, however it happens, it doesn't appear to be a whole lot of negotiation here. And I vividly remember the Clayton Homes situation. I think we were holding it at about $12 a share, and he offered 13-ish, and we were certain that it should have been at least 14 or 15. So he still owes us that. It should say right here, Mark and all the people in Michigan asked for more, and he said no. But yeah, there's a list of the companies, and those are, from underwear to ice cream. Pretty much has everything covered. Precision Cast Parts was a Mutual Club of Detroit company. So it shows some of the areas that he can get into. This one's fascinating, depending on what happens in energy, because they can make the pressure vessels that are needed for some of the power plants. And so I put together...
That's extra you were pointing to, Mark, or Shaw?
Shaw.
Yeah. I thought
that's actually a diamond in the rough for sure.
I thought Shaw Industries was a carpet company. Maybe I'm way off. Textiles company.
Yeah, that's the other guys. All right.
There is another Shaw company, Mark?
There is.
Oh, all right. Okay.
All right, so I put together a quick list. What I did here is I went into our database and I took a look at the characteristics of 4 recent active purchases. And those are up at the top. And the red line is the dividing line. And then I tried to make a shopping list of companies that we might want to be interested just in case it makes sense. What I did is with the stock portfolio at $300 billion, 5% of that, basically a small starting position, would be on the order of $15 billion. So that gives you some idea of where you might go shopping for some of this sort of thing. So I set the limit at 15 if we were buying out the entire company. And then for a company like Facebook, for example, he's also careful in a situation like that not to go above the 10% limit. So that would be a $50 billion purchase. So you can kind of see what company sizes we're dealing with here. And I'm kind of fascinated by the appearance of, the energy companies where he has shown an interest, but also the residential construction companies. And as you were just saying, Ken, some of these logistics companies that are showing up on here. In fact, that one at the very bottom just intrigues the heck out of me. And there's some pretty interesting companies on this list. Look at these two that actually make this list. DuPont and Dow, combination of those two companies. And with the activity that he's doing with Occidental, and the stuff that he's done historically, it's not out of the realm. So again, I think shopping in this type of a realm. By the way, he owns a little bit of UPS. So
yeah. Mark, repeat where the list comes from, would you?
I just grabbed it from the manifest database, added the market cap in so we could see how big some of these companies are and what it would cost to actually own the entire company. And then basically sorted it by, I wanted good companies, so good or excellent quality. And then I'm looking for companies that have good capital allocation and good return forecasts.
Was there any criteria, or did you just pick these at random, or?
Just by the size of the company and meeting those two characteristics.
Okay, all right.
These are the top when it comes to return on basically the return on that value, enterprise value.
Right, right.
And the return forecasts, they line up pretty well here. So again, I think if you want to try to capture the next stock that he buys, this one is fascinating to me too. I mean, there's a couple on here that as the management teams age at places like Nucor and Expeditors, it's kind of a potential Clayton Homes story, in my opinion. So worth watching.
What's interesting to me, Mark, is that you could go searching on this list for potential buys for your own portfolio without even the Buffett connection, if you will, to it. This list is just jam-packed full of, I think, extremely interesting studies, and I'm very pleased to see some of these companies rising to the top with their proved numbers. That says something about these two home builders, for example, one of which I happen to own. So I'm just thinking to myself, this is a pretty good, let's start to study some things on this list, even without the Buffett connection attached to it.
Yeah. And anything jump off the list at you, Diane, that captures your attention, or maybe?
No, I'm still with Ken on the transports.
Yeah, it's an area that he's definitely strategized and taken advantage of, so it might be something worth paying some attention to. All right, so good, clean fun. So be out there shopping alongside Warren, whether you know it or not. All right, let's spend a little bit of time talking about how nasty the market's been here lately. I'm actually channeling an article I wrote for Better Investing back in 2001. After that moment in time with the NASDAQ, and it reached that infamous peak at the end of the nifty 90s, or whatever we were calling it back then, that's shown here on the upper right. That's straight out of Better Investing magazine. And you can see how differentiated that was to the market. Basically a lot of steroids involved there. And it was an interesting moment in time, and I was actually channeling also the George Clooney movie where he launched off the coast of Massachusetts and didn't return back in that time frame. It's part of the story. So looking at that, and then Ken, I'll just let you mount the soapbox here and talk about the dangers. Go ahead.
I don't know. I've been reminding folks as I travel around and as I talk in my different venues, I've been reminding folks that really, if you're going to follow any of the kind of things that we talk about on a regular basis, you have to remind yourself that the companies we're talking about make money. And I really think that confining yourself to companies that make money, except for maybe a small sliver of speculation with stocks that you think might be at the launch pad ready to take off. That's called speculation, by the way, or the price to hope ratio. I think that if they don't make money, you really have to kind of put them in the rear view mirror and forget about them until they do make money. I don't care how beautiful that 10-year trend of sales is. If there's no blue line to match it, what are you really buying? Maybe some ideas, maybe some management that can take one step forward with the sales, but the management has to bring along some earnings before it makes any sense to me. And this is just showing what I've pretty well decided was true a couple years ago, that an awful lot of the market during the last 10 years or so was made up of companies that didn't make any money. I really object to the fact that this person that put this graph together calls them non-profitable growth, because I don't know how you can have non-profitable growth. This is something else. Mark's underlying speculation, that's probably where I think it falls as well.
Yeah, and I guess I would just second and urge everybody to understand that, yeah, you have a core investing portfolio and a smaller slice for this type of speculation. Many of you are aware that I have actual money invested in Ardelyx. That's one of these that does not, at least not yet, show any earnings. And but that is a small portion of what we do, but it can be fun. But this just shows, to me, it just shows so dramatically how Peloton and Zoom Video and those type of companies just got their comeuppance here in the last few months. And of course, Kathy Wood, we'll talk about her in a minute. She's invested almost completely in that orange line. All right. Then here's one that I ran into in that same write-up from Blaine Rollins. I wasn't aware of this, that the total fund, including ETFs and mutual funds, had actually gone net negative. And or the fact that traditional mutual funds have had a more outflow than inflow for quite some time now. And Ken wasn't surprised by this, and I'm not surprised by that. So yeah, it's a interesting picture. And I guess one last comment on this one. We talked last week about how index fund investing means that money is being tossed at companies, you know, the Apples and the Microsofts and all those up at the top, disproportionately with their market caps. And it cuts both ways. And that's part of what you're seeing with the stock market here over the last few weeks. They are actually getting they're basically being punished by these outflows also. You know, it's just something to think about.
Well, I won't belabor the point, Mark, but I've thought for a reasonably long period of time, maybe as much as 10 or 12 years, that the indexes do nothing more than the index funds do nothing more than make the indexes a lot less reliable and create a lot more volatility within the indexes. You know, these moves of 3, 4, 5% in the indexes, I think that was unheard of on a regular basis, even as close as 8 or 9 years ago. And we're seeing that kind of movement go on today. And I really think that the preponderance of investing in index funds just contributes to all that volatility for the reasons that you just gave.
Yeah, and I do think there's some vulnerability to algorithms. I would urge everybody to at least be aware and not be terribly surprised. I believe I read something briefly about a flash crash in Europe over the weekend. So some of that is very computer driven. Just keep that in mind. Keep your head.
I would also add that March historically is a month where people are taking money out to pay their taxes.
Yep.
And there are a lot of people who had, I'm sure, if they were in the mutual funds, some big unexpected capital gains payout in December.
Yep.
Oh, Mark and I had quite a discussion about that before you got on the call, Diane. Just anecdotes about what people are paying in unanticipated capital gains, especially unanticipated short-term capital gains, enough to make my sister-in-law, who's a heck of a lot richer than I am, I'll tell you, to make her pull her entire holding from BlackRock because of the unanticipated short-term gains. She goes, "Do you know what they're taxing me on that?" Yeah, I do. So.
And just as a footnote, when this is happening, it's not improving that situation.
No, it's not. No.
Just something to think about. All right, just a quick reference point to show that we talked about this a little bit last week with Ralph Acampor, the lost decade, and how the NASDAQ has done versus the S&P 500 since roughly the turn of the century. And yeah, this is a bit of a cooling off period, and certainly kind of a speed bump, and certainly has impacted Tin Cup a little bit. But I'm not terribly concerned. I mean, the QQQs, the Invesco, NASDAQ 100, this is all still pretty good stuff. I'm not worried about either one over the long term, not really. And they're actually getting a little bit attractive to go in and do some cherry picking again. Here's the QQQ. Again, just making the point that when you see this kind of stuff, worst year ever so far, I actually kick into shopping mode. So, and there's another quote I think we'll share during next week's bull sessions from Goldman Sachs about how a bottom may be near. So we pay a little bit of attention to them. At least we want to hear the words. But when Jim Cramer says it, I'll just leave it there. His track record's not real strong with his defense of Bear Stearns and those companies back in that time frame. Maybe we'll play some of that a week from today. All right, we have a new sheriff in town. Rob Martin has taken over the lead in the Groundhog. Warren was busy this weekend, so he slipped a bit, entertaining his, what is it, probably 50,000 people in Omaha, Diane?
Well, the stadium holds 20,000 and it wasn't full.
Oh, okay.
So I estimate probably 25,000 at least, because people were always in the shopping center.
Yeah, the only comment from Morning Brew was that people are going to discover how small the Omaha airport is. All right, so Rob Martin out of Pittsburgh takes over the lead. We'll look at his portfolio in a minute. John Bruntlett actually passed Buffett. Also, John is a longtime better investing volunteer and participant in the Spokane area. So
I see that pesky monkey still in the top 10, isn't it?
The pesky monkey is there. None of us have cracked into the top 40, although you're getting closer, and I'm not.
Well, Cy's even closer than I am, Mark. The two of us are within range of the top 40 now. So
a lot of very familiar names, though. There's Herb at number 4, making his run with Sin Soap and Soup, and
Mark, aren't you up around 20 something?
No, that's Lisa. Lisa's a Puget Sound investor.
Okay.
No relation, but we used to see her every year at our events. And a lot of really familiar names and a few new clubs at the top of that list. Shout out to Bob Shaw, who cracked the list at 39. All right, and the return actually went up a little bit. We all did a little bit better, but we still have an abysmal 13.3% of us beating the market. Keep in mind, I'm not kidding, that number averages around 60 over the 15 years of the contest. So that just shows you how unusual this market is with respect to the type of stocks, because you guys aren't crazy. You're out there buying a lot of pretty good companies, just a little bit of swinging for the fences, but behaving pretty well. And then last but not least, I really respect Cathie Wood. I think I understand what she's doing. I understand that orange graph and all that stuff. But boy, is she ever having a rough time this year. She managed to find the basement with the most recent update. All right, here's a look at Rob's portfolio. He's the only participant out of 166 with more than $1 million that we all started with. And he's obviously going for the cloud and cybersecurity angle on things, and some fairly early stage companies also. He already had a sale of one of his positions, this Dato MSP. That's what the cash is down here. So he's having a pretty good run. So he's part of that Pittsburgh legacy. And I know that, Ken, you share in tipping our hat in the direction of Pittsburgh and a number of very formidable investors in that area.
Absolutely. There's some smart folks there, I'll tell you. Mark, I'm showing you up around 903,000 in your portfolio. Are you making it so that yours doesn't show?
Well, I have a couple of investments that are not covered by manifest yet.
Ah,
that
so they're sitting with cash on them. Okay.
in fact, I refuse to even look and see what the real number is, Ken.
Okay.
Maybe I'll text it to you later. It may be too depressed to look right now.
All right. Well, I just got a message from one of our folks in our audience, and I didn't catch the name on it. Give me a second, I'll get the name off. It's Dennis. And Dennis is just letting you know that Ardelyx is up 4% today, Mark. Okay.
Oh, that makes my day.
All right.
I've got a few shares of Ardelyx for sure. Ardelyx is not in this year's contest. It wasn't above $1, so nobody could pick it. So, which probably will end up saving many of us. All right, here's a look at. We're actually doing better here, Ken. We don't want to spend a lot of time on this. We just wanted to note that the active portfolio is nudging up towards the green bar, and the Russell 2000 Growth ETF and our traditional portfolio are mired in a bear market. And the numbers overall are actually showing signs of hope. So we'll just continue to hope.
I find it crazy, Mark, that the two that we've knocked out of the portfolio are not the two worst performers in the portfolio anymore.
Yeah, those two at the bottom. I mean, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. These are vulnerable as young, more speculative companies.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with their fundamentals.
Yep.
And
they make money.
Crushed. So hopefully we'll get some January effect here pretty soon. And we'll see a little bit of a revival there.
I do like to see us back visibly above the Russell 2000 again now, the red bar. I do like to see that, just so that's a one step forward for us.
Yeah, the trends have actually been pretty good, so I think we just ignore it and let it keep going.
How can we? You keep showing it every week. So.
Yeah, I have to look at it every day. You should all have to look at it at least once a week.
All right.
All right. Just a reminder that we are going to be going over this book here fairly soon. Diane, you're reading it. What's your impression so far? You said you're most of the way through it.
I skimmed real fast over all the math things to focus on the fundamentals. So don't let all the math and the calculations in there scare you.
Okay.
They've got some really good fundamental words in there, and I particularly like the latter half of the book where they stay away from all the math.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a challenge. I mean, again, I think our community and our tradition is to honor both sides of that picture, both sides of the brain. We like numbers and we like pictures, and hopefully we can apply that to the book. Good stuff. All right. And then there's this one, Just Keep Buying. I picked it up and I'm going to be taking a look at that one. So again, this is just a heads up if you want to play along. And then one last one. This one is the guy we talked about so much last year with life cycle aspects of analysis and some of those orange curve companies that Ken was dissing here a few minutes ago. Brian does enjoy investing in some of those. He has a good, solid investing core portfolio, but he does dabble every once in a while into the others. And I'm told this book's pretty good too, so I think we'll take a look at that one too in the not too distant future. Okay, with that, just a reminder that on YouTube, Manifest Investing, you can actually subscribe, and we would appreciate it if you would do that. You'll be kept on notice anytime we post new content. We had a lot of fun last week with successful investing, celebrating workhorses. That's on medium-sized companies. And Ken, I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too, and I hope the audience did.
I thought it was a good presentation, Mark, and I've gotten a lot of mail on it too. Very interesting mail in some cases. So I appreciate the mail. Thank you for that. And if you get a chance, if you didn't catch this particular presentation, take a look at it. It's about 50 minutes long, and it's certainly brought to mind some of the things that maybe we let fly off the other side when we're focusing on small and large companies to a pretty big extent a lot of times.
Yeah, it's like we almost end up with the mediums by accident sometimes, and maybe we should be more intentional about that. And then I also wanted to point out, as the roundtable, I got an awful lot of correspondence on the roundtable also. And again, a great big thank you to Candace Baker for her presentation on Generac, the generator company, and Ann Manning, who's with us here this afternoon, and presented Houlihan Lokey, and that's a fascinating stock study also.
I don't normally get short emails coming from the roundtable, Mark, but I got a whole slew of them that said this was one of the few times in the entire history of the roundtable where they wished that there was a all of the above choice on the poll that we were doing. I think we really hit a pretty good double or triple or maybe a home run on the stocks that we chose. We had Generac and Houlihan Lokey and Western Alliance Bank, and we gave people something to really think about in that set of three companies.
So what you're saying is there was a lot to like there?
A lot to like.
The kiss of death. All right, and this was the close to the article, the Perfect Storm article from November 2001. And you've heard those words before, even though this is up to more decades than 5. And, no matter what we're facing and what turbulence we're facing, I still believe this. And everything we see from the Tin Cup and the Round Table and the various tracking portfolios, and for that matter, the Manifest 40 and what we envision as most of your portfolios, there are some smiles out there, and
patience and discipline. That's what essentially we're saying to everybody.
Absolutely, find a good company at a good price and own it for as long as strategically logical to do so. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and shut down. And good hunting out there, everybody. Take care. We'll stick around for some questions. I'm just going to shut off the recording.